Alrighty, well, welcome everyone. I'm so glad you're here. I'm Jessica Cole. I'm your Director for Work Life out of Human Resources. And today we have the Washington Employee Assistance Program. Wonderful presenter Carly Osborne is here. It is the EAP's Education and Awareness Specialist. And Carly, I'm going to go ahead and just pass it on over to you so we can get
Oh,
this started.
sounds great. So welcome everyone. As Jessica said, I'm Carly Osborne. I'm with the EAP, and today we are here to talk about psychological safety. So that is our goal in our hour together. While I present, I usually turn my camera off just so that the focus is on the presentation. So I'm going to go ahead and do that real quick, and let's get started. So before we really get into the heart of everything, I want to take a moment and kind of set the scene. So, this is what I want you to picture. You're in a team meeting and it's underway. We're all discussing a new project idea. We have a new member with us, though, Jane. She has some amazing and valuable experience, but she's kind of noticed that the proposal has a major flaw. But because she's new to our team and she doesn't quite feel like she has her footing or that she quite fits in yet, she doesn't want to speak up. So she worries, that her concerns are going to be dismissed, or maybe she's going to be viewed negatively by the boss or the team. So she keeps quiet. The meeting ends. The decision has been made that we're going to move forward with the proposal the way it is. And we kind of hit that exact roadblock that she foresaw. So we lose time, we lose resources, we have to go back to the drawing board and start over again. And now Jane feels even more silenced because she saw the problem, but she didn't speak up. And now she kind of feels like, well, gosh, if I had said something, we wouldn't have been here. But now if I speak up and say, well, I kind of saw this coming, she's going to feel even worse. So as we move through and talk about psychological safety, I kind of want you to keep Jane in the back of your mind because it really helps to visualize what she was going through to help us truly understand psychological safety. So, to understand psychological safety, it helps to know that it is a foundation. This is the foundation that we use to build healthy and thriving team environments. It creates a space where we as individuals feel respected and valued, and that we are free to express ourselves without fear of judgment or retribution. When we have this type of environment, we as a team are more likely to share our ideas. We are more likely to collaborate effectively, and we engage openly with each other. This is a concept that has become more and more important in today's working environments. We need to be innovative, we need to be adaptable, and we have to be inclusive if we want to be successful. So we're trying to make psychological safety a priority because we want to create that culture where individuals are empowered, where our teamwork is enhanced, and where we drive overall performance. So, if we really kind of dig into psychological safety, the actual definition, as coined by Amy Edmondson in 2003, is an individual's perceptions about the consequences of interpersonal risk in their work environment. It consists of taken for granted beliefs about how others will respond when one puts oneself on the line, such as by asking a question, seeking feedback, reporting a mistake, or proposing a new idea. In simpler terms, what we're talking about is it's a belief that no one will be punished or humiliated for speaking up with ideas, questions, concerns, or mistakes. And as we saw with our new teammate, Jane, she didn't quite feel safe in that for a lot of reasons. She was new. She felt maybe a little bit intimidated that she had so much experience and that people might react negatively to it. So she kind of kept quiet. But what's really important about psychological safety is this is not something that just happens on an individual level. It happens at the group level. So it shapes the learning behavior of our groups, and in turn, it affects our team's performance and our organizational performance as well. We create this sense of safety, which in turn creates a willingness to speak up, but it can't be an individual trait. Even though it's something that we feel compelled to do and experience at an individual level, without the support of our group, we are less likely to actually do it. So while we talk about each individual feeling safe and supported in our groups, we have to have that support and the backing of our teams to actually make it happen. And before I really get into some of the deep stuff about psychological safety, I do want to discuss a few myths because when I've talked about this before, these are the things that people usually immediately jump in and say, "Well, this is what I've heard." So we often hear that psychological safety is all about being nice and avoiding discomfort. It means that we have a guaranteed position on the team, that it has to be something that starts at the top and comes down, that it's static. But in reality, what it means is that we don't always have to be nice and avoid discomfort. It doesn't mean that we all have to be best friends. What it does mean is that we have created an environment where we respect and allow space for those tough and honest conversations, where we agree that we are not always going to agree, where we can say, I don't like that idea. I don't think it's going to work. And we're not going to be disrespected for it. Um, it also means that while everybody has a place on the team, that some people might kind of pull out a little bit more. They might be more comfortable taking a calculated risk. Other people who might tend to hang back might find that they stretch and grow in different ways. So everybody has a place in the team. It doesn't necessarily mean that for every project and everything we do, that everyone will play a really big position. Another truly wonderful thing is that every team member does have influence. It does not have to come from the top down. All it takes is that one person who's willing to start, and everyone kind of follows through. And it is not static. This is something that we have to actively work to build up. And if we don't actively keep working on it, it is something that will break down. So it is not static. We will keep having to work on it, which is why we're talking about this foundation now, so we can start building and keep learning. So, just to dispel some myths, and what's really helpful to know is that there are 4 stages of psychological safety, as defined by Timothy Clark in his book, The 4 Stages of Psychological Safety. Each of these stages are critically important in allowing the team to reach those that inclusive stage where we are thriving, where we're having higher levels of collaboration, where we are more creative, where our performance levels are higher. And so I want you to remember these stages because later on we're going to come back to them a bit more. But first, we're going to look at them each a little bit closer, starting with inclusion. With inclusion, we want to feel included. We want to belong. We don't always want to be best friends, perfectly fine, but we want to feel like we're part of our work group. We want to get along with the people that we spend the majority of our time with. So we want to be accepted so that we can be heard. The first stage simply means that we are being present, that we're comfortable being there. It means that all members of the team are included and welcome without discrimination regarding gender, age, race, social background, sexuality, neurodiversity, or anything else. What this looks like is, if we look back to our new team member, Jane, who might be from a different cultural background, different work background, different age, whatever it is, we want her to feel safe to share those ideas without worrying about being judged for her differences. We want the team to actively engage with her perspective and include her in the discussions. So that's what we're aiming for in that very first step. We want to find ways to actively include people. Our second stage, which is learner safety, means that team members are comfortable enough to ask questions, to give and receive feedback, to experiment and make mistakes. All of the behaviors that allow us to learn together. Team members at this stage provide feedback to each other, and they even ask for feedback from others. This is when we want people to say things like, I don't understand what's going on. Can you provide me some clarification on that? Or being able to say, I made a mistake. Can someone help me figure out where I went wrong? So we want people to be able to see where we need improvement, where we're doing things great, and to have that learning ability throughout the entire team. Contributor safety is stage 3. This is the stage where we feel empowered, where we can contribute our ideas and our suggestions, where we can continue to raise concerns and risks without interpersonal fear. I know we've all experienced that before, where we want to say something, but we fear that, oh, this is going to look bad come performance review time, or my boss is going to think poorly of me, or I really, really want that promotion. And if they think I'm not a team player, ooh, we've all been there. But in this stage that we're working toward, each team member knows that they have contributions to share and that they will be listened to because our individual skills, competencies, and insights are recognized by everyone. At this stage, we're looking at retrospectives and we're looking at postmortems. So everything that comes after projects and ideas become very powerful practices. So we're building up our communication. And if we're lucky and we've successfully worked on building that foundation and we have our first, second, and third stages, we're going to get to our fourth stage, which is challenger safety. This one is probably the hardest to achieve because it kind of takes us outside of our comfort zone. Because in this stage, team members can challenge the way the team works. We come up with new ways of working. We feel safe enough to challenge the ideas of others, even the most senior members. This is the most powerful stage of psychological safety. It not only allows new ideas to surface and enables learning from mistakes, but it can prevent potentially bad ideas from progressing. So, going back to our opening slide there, if the team and Jane, who was part of the team, had felt that they were at this stage of safety, she would have felt comfortable speaking up and saying, there's a flaw I see in this. Can we discuss it? So ultimately, when we talk about psychological safety, we want to make sure we're building that foundation so that we get to each of these 4 stages. And again, remember them because we're going to come back to them in a little bit. So why does psychological safety matter? In the end, what it comes down to is psychological safety is the cornerstone of trust and open communication within teams. When we have environments where people feel safe to speak up and to share those ideas and to take those risks without fear of negative consequences, we contribute more fully to the team's success. And when we contribute more fully to the team's success, it means successes and wins for our organizations. When we have environments where creativity thrives and problems are solved collaboratively and innovation is encouraged, we have people who want to stay. We have people who look forward to coming to work. But when we don't have that, we see the reverse of that. So kind of jumping forward here to look at just some statistics because, full disclosure, I'm a former adult services reference librarian and I love statistics. Research has shown that the benefits of psychological safety at work include just some positive things like 74% of employees feel less stress because we're not worried about, oh, if I say that, is this going to be taken wrong? 76% of employees found they're more engaged. We saw a 27% reduction in turnover. We also saw that 67% likelihood of employees applying what they've learned to other areas of their life. So they're using the skills that they learned through this collaborative process to better other areas of their life, to use them with other skill making abilities. We also saw that collaboration went up 57%. And what we also saw, interestingly enough, is that on teams with higher levels of psychological safety, diversity is positively associated with higher levels of performance. So what we're seeing is that the more diverse a team is, the more satisfied the members of the team are because we have that really respective environment where everyone is recognized for who they are and what they're bringing to the team, which is really, really fantastic. But on that flip side, as I was saying, when we don't have psychological safety in our work environments, what we see is about 60% of employees find that they have low resilience, which means that they feel burned out. And about 34% of that 60% are thinking about quitting their jobs. 93% of executives report feeling mostly or completely psychologically safe at work. Pretty standard because they're usually pretty high up there at the top. However, 86% of individual contributors and managers feel the same and say they feel less safe speaking up and less valued for their contributions. So If you're at the top, you usually feel really safe in your role and where you are and what you're doing. But as you move down, you feel a little less psychologically safe. We also say that psychological safety at work is something that influences the employee experience for better or for worse every single day. Unfortunately, this is something that we are still working on. About 61% of leaders with diversity related titles are only somewhat confident that their employees feel a sense of belonging, inclusion, and psychological safety at work. So you can see that when we don't have that psychological safety, it can truly affect us in our workplaces and make us feel like it's just not working out for us. So going forward, we're going to focus on not getting to the point where things don't feel safe for us. So let's look at building that culture of psychological safety. It requires intentional effort from both leaders and team members. So, regardless of the role you play within your team, we're going to discuss strategies and tips to help everybody with that. And truthfully, it starts with creating that environment where open dialogue, trust, and inclusivity are prioritized. Of course, leaders do play a key role, and we'll discuss some of the things that you'd play with that key role. But team members, you're not left out in this. You've got some commitments you'll have to make. But what we're working towards is that culture where everyone is fully present and fully committed, and that we are embedding this type of environment and culture into our team. So, again, as I said, we talked earlier about the 4 stages of psychological safety, and I wanted to bring them back because there are things that we can do to help start building those foundations for each stage, beginning with inclusion safety. So, with inclusion safety, what we have is remembering that this is a safety stage where we want team members to feel accepted, respected, and included, regardless of who they are and what they identify as. So we feel comfortable being ourselves without fear of rejection or exclusion. And, we're still thinking about Jane, so we know what that's like. We've all entered that situation, whether it's at work, in a new school environment, in a new social group, whatever that is. We all know what it's like to start something and feel like we're on the outside looking in and trying to find our footing. So, how can we find strategies to achieve the inclusion that we need? Well, we can do this by promoting inclusive behaviors, inviting diverse voices into conversations, setting up team building activities that focus on creating a sense of belonging for all members. We also need to make sure that we are providing training on things like unconscious bias and inclusivity to ensure that team members are aware of potential barriers to inclusion. A lot of these trainings prior to I know that with my prior career, they really didn't start becoming an important and required part of our training until about 2020, 2021. So making sure that we're providing trainings where we are learning how to be inclusive and how to invite people in. We also have with learner safety, again, making sure that people feel safe to ask questions, to make mistakes, and learn without fear or embarrassment of punishment. Because we want to know that our efforts to learn and grow are supported. To achieve this, we celebrate curiosity and questions. I know for many of us, if you've ever participated in a training that I've done on leading the human side of change, one of the things we discuss is that it can be very, very overwhelming in the workplace to feel like we're answering questions, especially the same ones over and over and over again. And so we tend to shut people down when they ask questions. So what we have to do is try to reverse of that. Instead of shutting down those questions, taking a moment to remind ourselves that this person values our knowledge and they're asking us because they feel safe coming to us. So doing things like celebrating that curiosity and encouraging people to ask questions, creating regular spaces for sharing knowledge. Lunch and learn sessions are a great example of that. There's one I will talk about a bit more, but leaders who can model these behaviors in the workplace are also wonderful for that. With contributor safety, where again, we want people to share those skills. We want them to share those ideas. We want those wonderful areas of expertise that they have because we want them to feel valued and we don't want people to feel dismissed. We want them to do this, and we can do this by creating Structured opportunities for everyone to contribute during meetings. So things like round robin sharing. I will share. This doesn't mean force the person who doesn't want to talk during the meeting. Maybe there's something they can participate later on. Using brainstorming sessions where all ideas are welcome with no immediate critique to encourage participation. There's a really fun way to do that. We call it, used to call it the negative brainstorm. Now it's just the brainstorm session. You put up a piece of paper somewhere, everybody throws out an idea, regardless of what it sounds like. We don't talk about it. You just throw the idea out, and later on, everybody gets to go back and kind of examine the ideas. We can also make sure that we are including this by acknowledging contributions publicly and providing positive feedback to reinforce the value of input. Again, positive, not the performative. So genuine positive, like, hey, this is a great idea. It might not work right now, but this is awesome. So, and then we also have our challenge your safety. And again, this is probably the most crucial and probably the most hardest one for us to achieve, because we want people to challenge that status quo. We want them to be able to dissent. We want them to offer alternative solutions, but we want them to do it without fear of retribution. So this is our empowerment stage. And we want people to be able to do this. So to help with that, we want to do things like openly asking for dissenting opinions and reward those constructive challenges. I mean, have you ever been in a meeting where someone said, okay, tell me what's wrong with this idea? It's really weird. You'll find that the first couple of times people will sit there in silence because you feel like it's a trap. But when it's done from a place of good intention with the honesty of, hey, I really want to hear what might be wrong with this idea, people catch on and it becomes really, really great and a really fantastic way to learn. We also need to start encouraging cultures where disagreements are seen as opportunities for growth rather than threats to authority. It's called a reframe. Too often, and it's very common for us, especially in workplaces where we have deadlines, we have expectations, and the thought of, if this project does not go right, this could mean really bad things for us, that we don't want to see a disagreement cause something to go sideways. So it's like, we're not going to have this disagreement. Rather than looking at it as a negative thing, we can say, yes, this could go wrong. But how can we use this disagreement on how we're going to carry this out to grow from it? Let's explore. But to do this, we also have to make sure that we're establishing things like ground rules for respectful debate. That means we can all voice our opinion and we're not going to rebut with things like, that's stupid. Oh, no, you don't know what you're talking about. It's finding how to have those civil conversations. And believe it or not, we'll talk about that in a little bit. So those 4 stages, those are just some very basic key things we can do to start building those foundations. It does take a lot of work. It does take more practice. And if you ever get the chance, I do highly recommend Timothy Clark's book, The 4 Stages of Psychological Safety, to continue developing that learning. But now that we've kind of got an idea of how to set the stage for those foundations, let's look at some key strategies for leaders. So leaders, this is about you for a moment. What we want to do is ultimately, trust is what we're trying to build, because without trust, we can't have psychological safety. So leaders, here's some key strategies for you. We want to model vulnerability. We want to encourage questions. We want to recognize contributions. Sound familiar yet? We want to handle mistakes constructively. And we are all doing this because, again, our aim is to build that trust. So let's talk about these a little bit deeper. So what does it mean to model vulnerability? We all know what this is. Deep down, it means that we find that we are able to openly admit when we don't have all the answers, when we're willing to share our own learning experiences, and when we're willing to acknowledge our mistakes. This matters a great deal because when we model our own vulnerabilities, it sets the tone for everyone else. It encourages that openness, and it really does help build that trust. It shows team members that our leaders are human and approachable. And it builds that collectiveness. It builds that we're a team. One example I will forever share of this is again, my prior workplace. We worked with the public. Unfortunately, we worked in an area where we did see a lot of violence in our workplace. We had a supervisor who was nearly physically assaulted. Thankfully, there was a piece of plexiglass between the supervisor and the customer. But the customer threw a punch. Had the plexiglass not been there, the supervisor would have received a hit to the face. Thankfully, he hit the plexiglass and cracked it. Really traumatic, though. I mean, nobody wants to see a fist flying at their face. We called all of the proper authorities, called our upper management, and upper management was like, oh, well, you weren't hit. You're okay. Take a minute to breathe and let's all get back to work and pretend this didn't happen. And normally that's what the supervisors would do because we want to show that strength. We want to show I'm leading my team and I'm showing that we can power through things. And so a lot of us were expecting that. But what he did instead was say, no, I'm not okay. I'm like really shaken by this. I don't think I can go back to work right now. I need to go home. I need to calm down. I need to do the things to take care of myself. And that's exactly what the supervisor did. He left for the day. And those that he directly supervised were, one, incredibly shocked because their supervisor told their direct boss, no, I'm not okay. I'm not going back to work. And two, they were amazed because he set that example. He was 100% vulnerable in that moment. And then he also started building that trust because they knew that when they had a moment where they weren't okay, that he was someone they could go to and say, I'm not okay right now. What do I do? Can I go home? Can I take a minute? Can you help me? And just in that one moment, that really changed the dynamics of his group because they saw him as human. They saw him as vulnerable and realized, oh, he deals with a lot of the same things we do. Beautiful moment. Of course, we all wish it didn't happen because nobody wants to see that in their workplace. But again, it really set that dynamic for his specific working group because they, kind of removed that layer of invincibility. He didn't react the way we would normally expect your leader to react. He was vulnerable, and it really set that tone and created that trust link. So I'm not encouraging people to go put themselves in a dangerous situation to build that trust. But what I am saying is it's okay as leaders to say, you know what, I made a mistake and I'm going to learn from it. And I hope we all learn from it together. It's also okay to say things like, I don't have the answer to that. Let's see if we can find it together. So making ourselves vulnerable in the workplace as leaders is perfectly okay. Encouraging questions. We all know we've all had that leader, be it our supervisor, a higher up, someone who will shut down that conversation. They don't want to answer any questions. But again, when leaders create an environment where curiosity is valued and team members feel safe asking questions, it becomes that trust link is built even more. It makes team members feel safe to clarify, inquire, and challenge ideas, which leads to better understanding and action. And when we look at it from trust, again, it's that open line of communication. It demonstrates that we don't have hidden agendas and there's no judgment. So we are creating that welcoming environment where we cultivate trust by showing that all input is valid. And it's really simple. We get in the habit of doing this. I used to do a lot of stage work when I was doing my associate's degree. And so we would do the yes, but, or the yes, and questions. Improv, so much fun. But it's things like stopping in the middle of a meeting and saying, hey, what questions do we have so far? Or, we've been doing the same thing the same way for so long. What can we do to challenge ourselves on this to make it different? Consistently asking what questions do we have and then responding with openness. Again, it goes back to that vulnerability too. Well, I don't have the answer to that question. Let's figure it out. Another really important part in building that trust so that we have that foundation is acknowledging and celebrating people's contributions. Whether it's our hard work, our collaboration, our ideas that we felt safe to challenge and question. But it's really important that we are doing that because when we consistently recognize and value the contributions of our team members, again, it builds our trust, it creates an open communication with our teams, and it makes people feel valued. And I don't know your teams the way you do, but we find those ways to acknowledge people, whether it's publicly just saying, thank you for doing this simple thing. Thank you for making sure that email got sent. Thank you for giving your input on this. Hey, thanks for pointing out that mistake. All of those things we do, whether it's small or big, you find the appropriate time and you give that contribution and that recognition where it is needed. And handling mistakes constructively. This one is really hard because I know for many of us, a knee-jerk reaction when something goes wrong is that we get really upset because it sets off our fight, flight, or freeze mode. Our survival mode kicks in because we have to fix this thing. And so we make that knee-jerk reaction. We might get mad, we might get stressed, we might just be like, I'm gonna fix this, everybody else go away. But for leaders who can approach mistakes as learning opportunities rather than reasons for blame or punishment, really find again that we're building that collaboration with our team. We're saying to our team, it is okay to not be perfect. So rather than responding with blame, we respond with constructive feedback and we teach our teams that it's okay to take risks and learn from errors. And just a couple of examples of how we might do that. Instead of criticizing someone for an error, I admit I'm always, that's my reaction is to criticize. We can instead of criticize, host a lessons learned session so that we can actually talk about what went wrong, what we can improve, and how we can all learn to move forward from it. The emphasis should always be on finding a solution rather than the blame. And when a mistake happens, a simple phrase we can say is, let's use this as a learning opportunity. Um, Again, it builds that trust because we're saying things happen and we can get through it. So those are just 4 key strategies that I found through the research that show what leaders can start doing to start building that psychological safety. And now, team members, let's talk about you for a few minutes. There were 4 key strategies that I found also for you to help building your roles in psychological safety because you may not be a supervisor, a manager, or director. I'm trying to think of all of the different titles that one might hold that show that you are actually managing a group of people. But you can also be leaders within your teams. You have the ideas. Maybe you're someone who's already comfortable standing up and saying, I challenge this thing. But for those of us who are still learning and still figuring it out, there are 4 key strategies that we can also do. So being approachable, learning how to offer constructive feedback, supporting our colleagues, and then encouraging open dialogue. And we'll look at those a bit deeper here right now. So what does it mean to be approachable? And full disclosure, this is something I struggle with because I hear approachable. And to me, that means I can just walk up to someone and talk to them. So I kind of interchange it with relatable versus approachable. But basically, what it means is that we can cultivate a demeanor that invites others to approach them with questions, concerns, or ideas without fear of judgment or rejection. So you can see why I prefer relatable over approachable, because I think if you can relate to me, we can probably talk. But why this matters in our teams is that it fosters that open communication environment where we know that we have support. Because ultimately that's what it comes down to. Research has shown that we can have the best of everything in our workplaces, but if we don't have the support of the people that we work with, we're going to suffer, we're going to struggle at work, we're not going to be happy there. So by making ourselves approachable, we are maintaining that I'm here for you and I can support you. And that doesn't mean you have to be 100% open, 100% available all the time. Boundaries are important, but it can be things like when someone comes up to you and says, hey, can you help me with this? That you can respond honestly, yeah, I'm available right now. What can I do? Or, you know what, I'm actually really busy right now. Is this something I can help you with later? Or, you notice someone comes to you, they're like, oh, I need to talk. It's okay to say, hey, sure. Do you need advice? Are you just looking to vent? What can I do? Offering that kind of approachability or just answering a simple question. So finding your level of comfort with being approachable while still maintaining your boundaries. Offering constructive feedback. And it just means that as team members, we are finding ways to be respectful, specific, and focused on growth rather than criticism. I know some workplaces, especially in the past, I think a lot about the work stories I heard from my parents when I was growing up about how it was so cutthroat and you couldn't be nice to people because they would stab you in the back and take your job in a second. Thankfully, we're not like that anymore, I hope. But what we want to do is we want to show people that we're here to help them and that when we provide constructive feedback that's specific and is meant to help pull them, bring them up rather than tear them down, that they're more likely to accept it and to actually use it to improve. So The research suggests the feedback sandwich. I'm not big on the feedback sandwich, but if you've never heard the term, it's a great starting point. Basically, what it is you start with a positive thing. So, hey, you were awesome in that meeting. I really loved the idea you brought up. Then maybe offer an area for improvement. But what I noticed is maybe instead of this thing, we could try doing this thing and then offering with encouragement. So, I really liked your presentation structure, but one thing that might improve it is clarifying the data points in slide 3. But other than that, it was an awesome presentation and your explanation was so great. It's clear, it's specific, it's a feedback sandwich. Again, I don't like the feedback sandwich, but for some people, this is a great way to start practicing. I've had extensive practice with it, so I'm a bit more direct with this was great, but here's where, you might want to consider polishing it up a bit. But, and hey, if I can help you with it, so I get both in there at once. So approachable and constructive feedback at the same time. Supporting our colleagues. Like I said, we need support in the workplace. Not only do we need that support to make work bearable, but we also have a loneliness epidemic as written by the Surgeon General. We're connected through technology, but we're more apart than ever before. So it means so much for team members when we can actively help and encourage one another, whether it's through emotional support, offering assistance, or just acknowledging each other's efforts. It matters because a supportive team creates that sense of belonging and security where members feel comfortable leaning on one another in times of need. And this encourages collaboration and builds stronger team bonds. So supporting people, again, just, hey, thank you for helping with that. Offering to listen when someone needs to talk, showing appreciation. And then encouraging open dialogue. Team members should actively promote open communication by being willing to engage in discussions, sharing ideas, and listening to others without interrupting or dismissing. I have a hard time not interrupting because I get excited about something and want to share. So I've had to learn how to quietly sit and wait. So, it's finding the little things that we can do to manage our own excitement or our own need to share information to just encourage that open dialogue. But allowing open dialogue ensures that, all of our voices are heard and valued, which helps us lead to better decision making and more inclusive team environments. So, in team meetings, actively inviting that quieter colleague that I mentioned earlier to share their thoughts. So saying something like, hey, I'd really love to hear your perspective on this, or would you mind sharing with us what your thoughts are on this? They might bring a different perspective or more balanced perspective. So encouraging that open dialogue. So team members here with us, those are your 4 key strategies to start helping build that psychological safety in your workplace. But I want to talk really quickly about communication because as we are building something, communication, again, is a really huge component of psychological safety because we talk a lot. There are some things that we do really wonderfully. There are other things that we don't. So what we want to do is we definitely want to use I statements, meaning, when we're discussing an issue or providing feedback, focus on our own feelings rather than making about the other person. This is something that I actually learned in a mediation course that I took when I had conflict with a coworker. We both had to go to mediation because we could not talk. And we had to learn to say things like, instead of saying, you never listen to my ideas and blah, 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 and you this and you that, because the minute you do that, someone becomes defensive. We had to learn to reframe it and say things like, I feel unheard when I'm not given a chance to share my thoughts during meetings. It's still saying the same things, but we're focusing on the impact of I'm feeling this way because this thing is happening rather than me accusing them of making me feel this way. So practicing those I statements. I feel bad when you don't say hi to me in the morning. It's nothing big, but reframing it, using that active listening. That's a skill that takes a lot of practice. It means we're just giving our full attention to speakers, we're engaged, and we're confirming our understanding by summarizing, so parroting back, clarifying and asking for more information. So saying things like, what I hear you're saying is, and then repeating it back to them. We also offer solutions, not criticisms. So when addressing an issue or problem, provide that constructive feedback that includes potential solutions instead of simply pointing out the problem. offering solutions is always going to provide that forward thinking approach and create that collaborative environment. When we're doing the blame game, we break the team down. So we want to avoid blaming people because blame is not good. We want to try to avoid interrupting people. And we want to stop making assumptions because we don't always know what it is that the other person is trying to share with us. But let's look very quickly at overcoming barriers. It sounds like it would be so easy to create psychological safety, right? We just have to do these things, make everybody feel included and ask questions and listen to each other and provide support. And if it were that easy, we would all have the wonders and the greatness that is psychological safety in our workplace. But unfortunately, there is always going to be a barrier. So typically what we see is barriers arise from things like deeply ingrained cultural norms. There's power dynamics that play, past negative experiences that make team members hesitant to speak up or take risks. Those are really big ones. You know, we bring all of our lived experiences with us into the workplace. So if you come from a prior employment, a prior job where things were really tense, really unsafe, that's going to live with you. It's going to come with you and show in your new place. But we have to learn ways to overcome those barriers because it is really crucial because we don't want that low morale. We don't want poor collaboration. We don't want to miss opportunities for innovation. So we are going to look at addressing some challenges. One of the biggest ones, one of the biggest ones that we see is that fear of judgment or reprisal. For many of us, it's really hard to speak up or share ideas. You know, we're scared we're going to be judged or criticized, or maybe in the past we've shared an idea and people have laughed or brushed us off, or maybe we've been treated negatively because of that. But this is where we really have to focus on that the no blame culture where mistakes are viewed as learning opportunities. And we go back to that modeling vulnerability, creating low pressure feedback opportunities, encouraging questions, and sharing dialogue. We also find that hierarchical pressures create a problem. You know, rigid organizational hierarchies can make team members feel uncomfortable voicing concerns or ideas. So we want to try to flatten communication channels. This doesn't mean we're going to flatten everyone's positions. It just means that we create open dialogue across all levels of organizations in a way that works best for all of our teams. We also have that lack of open communication. Again, establishing a culture of transparent communication can be a solution to that. So regular check-ins, using tools like anonymous surveys, that is really helpful, making sure that we find ways to make people feel heard and seen. We also have fear of conflict. That's normal, perfectly natural. But also we want to practice and learn healthy conflict resolution skills. This is a great way for professional development. There's a lot of wonderful trainings out there for conflict resolution. And then lack of inclusion. This is also another big barrier because we want to feel included, but it can also be hard to make ourselves feel included. So building inclusive practices is also a number one thing. So making sure that we are actively seeking out the perspective of underrepresented team members and encouraging participation through inclusive meeting practices. Again, we go back to things like unconscious bias training, you know, all of those wonderful DE&I initiatives that we are seeing and all of the training opportunities that come with those. So we can address some of the very core challenges that we see to overcoming building psychological safety in our workplace with a few very basic practices that we can build upon. We also know that navigating difficult conversations affect our ability to begin building psychological safety. It's very hard to encourage open dialogue and say, we're going to say things that you might not disagree with, that you might disagree with, that you might not like, and we're not going to be rude about it because it can kind of go a little off the rails. So we're going to do a few things like setting ground rules. We all know how important ground rules are. And it's things like, we're going to be seen, we're going to be heard, we're going to be polite about it. But it's also things like, if you feel like this is too overwhelming or it's too much for you, please leave the meeting, get up and step out of the room, or turn your camera off and step away from your computer and breathe and do whatever you need to do to take care of yourself and come back when you're ready. No pressure. You don't have to make an announcement. We're not going to say anything about it. Focusing on behaviors, we tend to focus a lot on people, that people are the problem, our characters or our personalities is what causing an issue, where it's really an action or a behavior that is problematic. So when we avoid making the conversation feel like a personal attack, we reduce the likelihood of them being defensive. So it makes it easier to address an issue rather than trying to mitigate a fight. So instead of, whatever that might be, whatever the action is. Well, you're yelling, it must be you're angry. Well, maybe they don't feel heard. What is the let's look at the behavior that's leading to that defensiveness. We also need to seek understanding. Again, we all can say the same thing in 20 different ways. And unless we take the time to actually seek understanding, we might not really know what's going on. So making sure that we are seeking understanding for why things are happening so that we can make sure we're moving forward in a productive way. Using neutral language. This is such a hard one, especially for someone like me who likes to talk a lot. Part of the reason why I have my job. Um, so saying things like, avoid emotionally charged or accusatory language because it escalates tension. So neutral, fact-based language that focuses on issues rather than emotions. So in saying things like, ugh, you make everything harder for me, we could try saying something like, I find it difficult to complete my task when things are changed last minute. Could we maybe discuss a better way to handle these situations? Same thing, said differently. One is just better than the other. Acknowledging emotion. I know as adults, we try really hard to kind of push emotion down in our workplaces because that's what many of us were taught. But really what it comes down to is we have to acknowledge the emotion because it means we're demonstrating empathy and understanding by being able to say, I'm upset right now and I'm not able to have this conversation. Or, I'm really angry right now because I'm feeling upset by what was said. I need to take a moment to think. So rather than ignoring the emotion, we learn to acknowledge it. And then to also continue with that navigating a difficult conversation, we need to offer a path forward. And it means, after we've discussed this issue and we've worked collaboratively to find a solution, we need to find a next step that we can both agree on. Focus on what can be done to move forward rather than dwelling on the past. I am amazing at getting stuck in the past. And, I have solved so many problems from 20 years ago in my head so many times that it's ridiculous at this point. So we have to be forward thinking though, because if we're living in the past, we're not going to get past it. So offering a clear path forward helps move the conversation from problem identification to problem solving. It also reinforces the idea that the goal is improvement and not punishment. So just something we can do to keep in mind for how we might build upon that strategy is to say something like, let's agree that we'll check in weekly to ensure we're staying on track. So so that we can make sure that we are confident that we're working together to find a way that makes this work. So again, just some really key, very simple things that we can start doing to make sure that we are navigating difficult conversations. There's also a wonderful training. If you ever get the opportunity to take it, I highly suggest it. It's called Crucial Conversations, Tools for Talking When Stakes Are High. Again, absolutely wonderful training. I've taken it a few times myself and I cannot speak highly enough about how amazing it is to actually learn how to do these things with skilled trainers. So we're kind of coming to the end of our time together. And really quickly, though, when I started researching for this project, I really wanted to be able to provide examples of ways that psychological safety has really impacted workplaces. And one of the things that I found was Google's Project Aristotle. And I know everybody has different feelings about Google. We're not going to focus on Google as a whole. Project Aristotle actually launched in 2012. And essentially what it was a study aimed at identifying what makes teams successful. So over several years, they looked at 180 different Google teams just to look at what factors contribute to their performance and their team effectiveness. And so, really interestingly, what they found is they wanted to determine a few things: why these teams were more productive, why they were more innovative, and why they were more cohesive than others. So, what they found was this: the single most important factor for high performing teams was psychological safety, that the team shared belief that they are safe and in a space where they are okay taking interpersonal risk. The team members felt safe to express themselves, ask questions, admit mistakes, and offer new ideas, and they were more effective. They also found that these teams were more dependable because they could count on one another to get their work done on time and meet high standards. They also found that these teams thrived in an environment that was more structured and had clarity. They knew their goals, their roles, and their expectations. They also knew their meaning. They found personal meaning in their work and felt that it contributed to their overall sense of purpose. And the impact: the team believed that their work made a difference and had significant impact on the organization or society. And what they found through all of this is that over and over again, what they found with this is that the study revealed that how the teams worked together was more important than who was on the team. The dynamics of the communication, the trust, and psychological safety played a bigger role in team success than the individual talents or expertise of the members. So, our high performing teams created environments where members felt safe to take risks, share ideas, and contribute meaningfully. This is one of the most in-depth studies that was done on team dynamics, where they found that psychological safety was the key to high-performing teams. So really just finding this one study, there were a lot of others too, but this one was the most researched and most referenced, really showed that it doesn't matter who makes up the team. What matters is how we're working in the team. And the crux of it was we had to have psychological safety. By having that trust, we were dependable, we were collaborative, we were innovative, we were supportive, and we all had each other's backs, is what this team was saying. So Project Aristotle was a fantastic example of psychological safety done right. If you ever get a chance to really look into it, I highly suggest it, because there is some interesting information to be culled from that. So, as we get ready to wind down for today, I have a call to action for you. And I do actually have a workbook that I put together. I will send that and the PDF of this to Jessica to share out with all of you. What we have here is a roadmap for fostering psychological safety. There will be step-by-step instructions for what you can do. But what we want to do is that we are going to use this roadmap to really reflect on your team's level of psychological safety, regardless of what your role is in that team. And what we're looking at is an example where we do a couple of specific steps. We're going to assess, we're going to set, we're going to implement, we're going to check in, we are going to create. And using this roadmap, we are going to find a way to start working to create psychological safety in our teams. This is a roadmap that you can use over and over again. It's meant for individuals and for teams. It's a really great starting point to see where we might be doing really well and where we might be struggling a bit. Again, this is a activity that I have in a workbook for you that I will make sure Jessica gets to send out to you. But as we come to our time together today, I just wanted to share with you that, in today's evolving working environment, which will never stop evolving, psychological safety is more than a concept. It is the foundation of high performing teams. By creating this culture where everyone feels safe to share, collaborate, and take risks without fear, we unlock the full potential of our teams. Whether it's through these small changes like just providing constructive feedback, or these larger initiatives that promote inclusivity, every step we take matters. And so, as we leave each other today, I really want you to reflect on what you can do to foster psychological safety within your team, because together we can create environments that support trust, innovation, and long-term success. I did include all of the references that I used in putting this together in case you really want to look into them more, but that is our look at starting to build that foundation of psychological safety. And I will make sure that Jessica gets the PDF and the workbooks so that you have it available to you. And yeah, the question that was asked in the chat was, where can you take that class at UW? And it was the Crucial Conversations. Yeah, Amy Daly Donovan does have stuff on YouTube as well. But yeah, it's if you get a chance to take that training at any point in time. I do occasionally see it if you use Eventbrite. Occasionally people hold it for free online and in person sometimes too. So, but I thank you for having me here today. This was really great. I'm really hoping you got some insight into psychological safety and some thoughts as to how you can start bringing it into your workplaces. Normally I would stick around for a few extra minutes for questions. Unfortunately, I have another presentation in 4 minutes, but what I would like to do is, and Jessica does also have my contact information. I'm going to put my contact information directly in the chat. So if anyone has any questions or wants some further resources for learning about psychological safety, please do feel free to reach out to me. But I will make sure that Jessica has this PDF and the workbook. I should be free to send it to her around 4 o'clock today. But again, thank you so much all for having me here today. I love being able to come out and talk to everyone.
Thank you so much, Carly. We really appreciate you. And I hope your next presentation goes as well as this one did.
Thank you very much. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye now. Bye,
Bye.
everyone. Thanks so much for being here.